Hello, Trailblazers, and welcome to another edition of Entrepreneur Journey. And I am so glad to have Tom Ziglar on with me today. This is kind of like a dream of mine. I have been a fan of his dad's since I started my entrepreneur journey. So I am anxious to talk to Tom and just find out more about him and how he's continuing his dad's traditions and legacy. And it's an honor to have you here, Tom.
Well, Doug, it's great to be here, and I appreciate you for having me on. I'm excited.
Awesome. So I have a few getting to know you questions just to start off, just some fun things. And I apologize for my dog barking in the background. He's in my office. And anytime a vehicle drives by, it's just the nature of the game. So I apologize for that. What is your family's favorite recipe?
Oh, that's a good one. My mom she passed away a few years ago, but she proved like 30 years ago that she could cook. And so that meant that when it was time to eat, we just went and got in the car. And our Thanksgiving tradition became Luby's Cafeteria, which in Texas and kind of where we are, Luby's was a big deal. And so she would order turkey and dressing from Luby's. And that's my memory of basically Thanksgiving and Christmas is that turkey. So our favorite recipe is Thanksgiving turkey from family recipe from Luby's Cafeteria. And then mom always made green bean casserole, which was green beans, the mushroom soup in a can poured over the top of it, put it in the oven, and then put the onions on top, the little crispy onions. So pretty simple stuff.
Nice. Is Luby's still there in Texas?
Yes, Luby's is still here. There's a location about 15 minutes from our house, but most of their stores have gone out of business. So I don't know. Okay. They're hanging on. I'm trying to keep them in business, but I don't know how long that's going to last.
I'm just thinking if I ever make it down that way in Texas, I'm going to have to check it out. So I will do that. So tell us about some of your hobbies.
Yeah, well, I love to fish. I used to play a lot of golf. I need to play more of that. And really hiking, anything in the outdoors, whether it's on a beach or a mountain. I prefer mountains and, kind of cooler climbs with elevation. But yeah, that's what I love to do.
I'm very similar. I love being out in God's majesty. Like I love just to experience, like God created this mountain right here or this ocean. And it's just like, it puts me in awe every time I can see things like that. So I love being outdoors as well. I'm not much of a fisherman, but I will cast a rod every now and then. And I'm not much of a golfer, but I love to play that sport. So.
Yeah. I would like to play more often and better when I do.
Yes. Yeah. I play the game called Let's Go Find the Ball in the Woods. That's the game.
There you go.
So do you prefer the corner piece of a brownie or the center?
The corner. We actually have a baking pan that's one of those that has all the ridges in the middle of it. So everything's a side piece or nice. A corner piece.
I'm in agreement with that too. So let's get into your entrepreneur journey a little bit. You're the first legacy entrepreneur that I've interviewed. So this is really interesting for me. So what was it like when you were a child being the son of such an inspiring and iconic person as your dad?
I tell you, as good as dad was on stage, he was even better off stage. And, when I was growing up, he's just dad, right? I mean, you don't really recognize, when you go and you hear him speak and there's a couple thousand people in the room and people are, hey Zig, how you doing? You're walking in strange places. Everybody knows him. Then I started working at the company and I began to realize the impact that he had. And now it's just such a blessing because I can travel anywhere in the world. And it's like I'm with family and friends because they've read the books, they've listened to the audio, they've watched YouTube clips, they've seen all this stuff. And because it was around a life-changing philosophy that people gravitated towards, it means that people who recognize him and give him some small credit or catalyst for their own growth and development, it just makes it so great to follow in that. It's just a blessing.
Yeah, I would have to say he's the foundation of my whole entrepreneur journey. He's probably one of the first books I read. And then I've been an avid reader for a long time, but I've always followed his principles. So,
yeah, in being an entrepreneur, I like to have three circles. Okay, it's like an entrepreneurial diagram, and the center circle is the business owner. It's the entrepreneur. And that's what Dad's whole career was, around that personal development. Because if the owner's not right, the business is going to struggle. I mean,
mm-hmm.
if you don't understand what balanced success is, then the circle that goes right around that, in order to grow or scale, you've got to have business systems. And then the third circle is you got to have people, and you're constantly developing people. And the challenge is when you grow, the systems and the people, those two circles, those two rings, they keep switching places. Mm-hmm. It's like you get all your systems in place and a key person leaves. And then you get, so now you're working on, developing a new person into that role, and the market changes. So you got to have new systems. But I always go back to so many entrepreneurs started with Dad, because when they got themselves right, then it allowed them to do everything else effectively.
I couldn't agree more. And was it always planned that you were going to follow in your dad's footsteps and run the company, or were there other plans?
When I was in college, I played college golf, and I thought, you know what, I want to be a professional golfer. So I actually started working at the company to support my golf habit.
Nice.
So I started in the warehouse, and then in the production area. We used to produce our own audio and video, cassette tapes back in the day, and VHS. Mm-hmm. And then I moved into sales and just fell in love with it. Really enjoyed it. And I also realized that those guys on tour are really good. So it was a natural transition. I gave golf everything I had, but just started a little late, didn't have the talent necessarily, and then fell in love with something else. So that's the only place I've worked since I got out of school.
Nice. So we know that Ziglar is a faith-based company. Can you talk a little bit about how faith plays a role in your life and your entrepreneur journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So remember the three circles: the owner in the middle, and then the systems, and then the people on your team. Well, at Ziglar, what we're different is that there's actually that target. If you look at that as a target, the bullseye of the target is actually God. Mm-hmm. And so everything we do is centered around that perspective, that God's the center. So Dad was a born again Christian. I am as well. And so if anything sounds smart from us, it's generally borrowed out of scripture. And we just, I heard a good preacher say, a good preacher gives a timeless message in a timely way. And Dad had such a phenomenal ability to take complex things and make them so simple. And then you look today at all of the disruption that's going on in the business world, and I'm really excited about it. I'm calling it not the great resignation, but the great reimagination. One of the things that Dad said in the 70s and 80s was that if you make standard of living your goal, quality of life almost never goes up. But if you make quality of life your goal, then standard of living almost always goes up. And so what's happening now is, whether it's in large corporations or mid-sized businesses or small, people are realizing that they want to work somewhere that matters. They want to do something that fulfills a purpose, and that there are other things that are the center of their life that are more important, like faith and family, mm-hmm. and mental and physical health, and what we teach. And the interesting thing is when those become the priority, as an owner, when you start understanding that quality of life equals quality of work, and you start developing your people, and you think of them more as just somebody who comes in and does performance for the job, and you start trying to figure out what their goals and motivations are, and you start trying to understand how they are struggling or thriving at home and how you can help, that's the game changer. And so the world, because of the pandemic and all the realities of uncertainty and losing loved ones, it's really brought people back into, I think, the right priority focus. I'm not saying it's been easy. I'm just saying that I like the way the values have started to shift in a way that I think is more in alignment. And of course, that matches up with scripture. So that's kind of our perspective and where we come from.
Yeah, I've had the same perspective about the pandemic, how it's driven people like back into the home, back into putting family first. I think it's, it's, the pandemic is a bad thing, of course, but some of the things that have happened because of it are good things.
Yep. Since we talked a little bit about golf, so here's an entrepreneurial mindset, which I call the coach leader mindset. Tom Watson is iconic as a golfer. He won 8 majors, and 5 of those majors were British Opens. And they asked him one time, they said, how did you win 5 British Opens? Because to win one major in your career is, very rare. And he said, oh, the weather's bad. And they said, well, what does that have to do with you winning 5 of them? He said, well, when I'm playing good, I only have to compete against about 20 out of a field of 150. But he said, when the weather's bad, I only have to compete against 4 or 5 because everybody else takes themselves out of the game. And so he says, I do well in the British Open because the weather's bad. And so as entrepreneurs, as coach leaders, I think we should pray for rain.
Oh, yeah.
Right. You see what because really when things are in disruption, there are more problems to solve. And if we embrace that and get focused on solving problems rather than on everything that's happened to us that we don't like, then we gain market share. We meet the needs of our people at a different level. We can serve our customers and prospects in ways that they've never experienced before. And it's really that idea of a growth mindset of learning and growing and not fixed on, gosh, I've always done it this way. This is terrible. So that's what I've seen as well is leaders, coach leaders who really embrace the disruption are the ones that are winning right now.
Yeah. A kind of a similar experience in the marketing world is we deal with a lot of companies that when times start to get crunched, they pull back their marketing, and while others ramp up their marketing, and it's usually the people that ramp up their marketing that thrive, while the others have their marketing pulled back. So we've experienced that for sure.
Absolutely, and it's really a mindset. It's really a choice. The book that I just came out with called 10 Leadership Virtues for Disruptive Times, the whole first section is about, as entrepreneurs, as coach leaders, as owners, we have to create the atmosphere for our people. And atmosphere to me is spiritual. And, 2 years ago, Zoom meetings were tolerated. And now it's like, I know so many entrepreneurs who are like, wow, why couldn't we have figured this out sooner?
Yeah.
Because now I can have 4 client meetings in a day that used to take me 3 days, and I don't have to leave the house. I don't have to travel to go do it, and we get more done faster. And so now they get to pick what they eat and when they work out. They get more time with their family. And so all of these things, if you embrace it and create an atmosphere with your people, even in a Zoom meeting or whatever technology you use, as long as they know that you care about them and you want them to win and you're helping them grow and develop, a Zoom meeting can be very effective.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. One of your father's most famous quotes is, you can have everything in life you want if you just help enough other people get what they want. That has been ingrained in my brain ever since the beginning of my entrepreneur journey. And I try and live by that as my company grows. So can you talk about that quote and how you feel why it resonates so well with people?
Yeah, it's the golden rule. It's putting the other person first. I'll just give you an example, and this is really important for people to understand some of the issues that we're having culturally, and how, as entrepreneurs, how we can create the right atmosphere in our business as we hire and develop new people. So I have a coach, and I was working with her, and we were talking about inclusion. And of course, that's kind of that's kind of a hot potato word, in the business world. Well, what do you mean inclusion? And she said, well, I said, what do you mean by that? How, because we were talking about coach leadership. And she said, how would a coach leader make sure that inclusion happens? And inclusion generally means people who are, kind of left out of the process. And I said, well, explain. And she said, well, I'm from Puerto Rico. She's like our age. She's in her 50s. And she got started in the corporate world on the East Coast. And culturally, as a female and from her background, she wouldn't raise her hand and say, can I have that project? She wouldn't raise her hand and say, hey, what about me for a raise? That just wasn't the way that she was brought up. And she said it took her a while to figure that out, that, wait a second, I'm holding myself back by not being more forward. She said, how would a coach leader address that? And so this is the quote: you can have everything in life you want if you help enough other people get what they want. If you bring somebody on the team, don't wait for them to tell you what they want. You go in the very first day, the very first week, even in the onboarding before you hire them, and you try to figure out, where do they want to be in their career? What are their big goals and dreams? What's their why? Yeah, they need to make money, but when they make money, what are they going to do with it? What is that going to do for their life? And you start getting a clear understanding of where they want to go. And then you say, hey, you know what? I want to pay you more money, but it has to be, your compensation has to be in relationship to your contribution to the profitability of what we do. Does that sound fair? Of course it sounds fair. People have a sense of fairness. They know when they're being treated and compensated fairly. And so if somebody constantly is growing and bringing profitability to whatever they do, it only makes sense to compensate them more. And so what a coach leader does is says, hey, you know what? I do want to pay you more money so you can get your dreams. Does that sound good? Yeah, it does. Okay, then what areas do you need to grow in order for you to be more effective so that you can make more money so you can get your dream? You see, if we do that as leaders from the very beginning, then nobody gets left behind. Whatever their background or culture or whatever their view of the world is, as leaders, when we ask them, what do you want? Let me help you get there. Let's co-create a plan. Then inclusion is not an issue anymore. And you know what? People stay where they're growing, and they thrive where they feel valued, and they know there's a future for them when leadership puts in a development plan for them so they can be more capable tomorrow than they are today.
That is awesome. And I think just the idea of valuing your people, and that is a great way to value your people, is to lift them up. That is an awesome thing. So I know one of your keynotes is the fastest path to achieving your goals. Can you dive into that a little bit?
Yeah. This is the first book that I wrote, called Choose to Win. I was speaking in Australia, and this is, 7 or 8 years ago. And this there's like 150 entrepreneurs and real estate investors in the room. And right before the first break, this guy raises his hand and he says, he says, "Hey, can you share with us what the fastest way to success is?" And so I'll be honest with you, Doug, I'd never been asked that question before, that directly. Usually it's like, what are the three keys to success, or what do successful people do? I love this guy. I want to know the fastest way. And I just blurted out, the fastest way is to replace bad habits with good habits.
Mm.
So we went to break, came back, and Steve McKnight, who's a good friend and mentor, he had me there. He's the one who brought me over. He said to everybody, "Hey, get your pen out. Did you hear what Tom said before the break?" And then he said, "Tom said the fastest way to success is to replace bad habits with good habits." And I like did the double take. You've ever done that? Like, did I say that? So
Yeah.
I wrote it down. And that night I went on Google and to see who said that quote. Nobody had said it. So I claimed it. And then I started testing it. So if you are looking at creating business success, or success in family relationships, or success with your physical health, or it doesn't really matter what part of life, if you start incrementally getting rid of little bad habits and replacing them with little good habits, then that has over time an incredible change. And one of the things that we see all the time is that I see entrepreneurs doing so many things right, but it's all for naught because they keep doing a few things wrong.
Mm.
And the weight of the wrong will hold back all of the right that you're trying to do. And we see that in people's lives when they try to change a lifestyle habit. They'll just get rid of something, but they leave a void there, and it usually gets replaced with another bad habit. So we have to be very intentional. We have to be intentional about replacing the bad habit with a good habit. And so that's what we mean is it's not only, hey, these are the things I need to do in order to achieve my goal. It's identifying the things that are holding me back and getting rid of them as well.
So would an actionable step to this be to like write down what you think all of the things that are holding your back are, and then write down a list of all the things that you could replace them with, and then slowly incrementally do that? Would that be a good actionable step?
Absolutely. And an example of this, if you've ever quit smoking or know someone who has, there is a pretty good percentage of people, when they quit smoking, they'll gain weight. And what they've discovered is it's not that your food cravings go up, it's just that your body is conditioned to do something with your hand. And, because you're bringing it up to smoke. And so one of the great things you can do is say, hey, I'm going to quit smoking and I'm going to drink more water. And so what you do is you keep the bottle of water with you. And then every time you get the urge, you drink some water. And so instead of grabbing the sugar or the carb, you're grabbing the water, you're satisfying that physical habit that's feeling neglected and getting you through that urge at the same time. So that's the way it kind of plays out. So definitely you look at the things, okay, what am I doing that's sabotaging me? I was talking to a guy, and he was in a career and he wanted to start his own business. And I said, how are you going to do it? And he said, well, I'm going to work my career because I don't have the finances to start my own business. But every night I'm going to come home and put a couple of hours into it, launching it, get some clients, spend some time on the weekend. And I think in 6 months, I'll have enough business on the side that I can leave my career. Well, 6 months later, I talked to him and I said, well, how's it going? And he goes, oh, it's not, I haven't done anything. Well, why not? Well, I'm so tired when I get home from the day. Well, what do you do when you get home? Well, I usually sit on the couch and eat 5 bags of Cheetos. You see the problem there is he's got this great goal, but he doesn't have the physical energy and capacity to do it.
And so, he's not fueling any energy by eating Cheetos.
Exactly. He needs to lose 100 pounds exercise so that he can. And so the bad habit of poor physical health is what's preventing him from creating his dream, which is owning and running his own business.
Awesome. Can you talk about how much having a positive attitude as an entrepreneur plays into growing a business?
Well, Dad said a positive attitude will outperform a negative attitude every single time. So there is, if you're smart, okay, so everybody listening, you're listening to this podcast, so you're smart. So ask yourself a question. Would a smart person jeopardize their business by having a bad attitude? No, it just doesn't make any sense. We have a formula at Ziglar. It's attitude times effort times skill equals performance. And so, when somebody's brand new in the business, they don't know what to do. They walk in, their attitude's a 1, their effort's a 1 because nobody's told them what to do, and their skill's a 1 because they haven't been trained. So 1 times 1 times 1 equals 1. Well, after they've been there a while and they've been trained and they've been told what to do, and they've got good leadership, their attitude's a 2 because they got some confidence and they're being supported. Their effort's a 2 because they're fulfilling their job role, and their skill is a 2 because they've been trained. Well, 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. Now, here's the interesting thing. Entrepreneurs, business owners, people who, change the world and create their dream, they don't wait for somebody to inspire them. Their attitude isn't dependent on the weather. It's not dependent on the person next to them. They take ownership of that attitude, and they know they're going to make it positively contagious, because as the leader, people are going to play off of your attitude. So it better be positive. Otherwise, you're going to get negative results. So when they own it, the attitude goes to a 3. Effort, they don't care what everybody else does. They own their effort. So that's a 3. And skill, they're constantly investing in themselves in all areas, personal development, professional development, to raise their skills. Well, 3 times 3 times 3 is 27. So that's like 5 times what the rest of the world's doing. And so we call that the ownership. So you got to own your attitude. Now, let's say the leader has a bad day and their attitude's negative. Well, -3 times 3 times 3 is what? It's -27.
Wow. Yeah.
Stay home. Don't talk to
You're right.
Don't talk to anybody on your team, and don't talk to any prospects or customers. So you get that attitude right.
I have a positive attitude. I don't know if that you could tell that about me just for knowing me this little bit, but and I see it reflected in my team. But to go back into the corporate world, when I was in the corporate world, I'd had one manager who would come in with a bad attitude and see the way that his team performed compared to when I went in and the way my team performed. It's like night and day. So I definitely resonate with what you're saying, because I've seen it firsthand.
There's a quote that I say: we create the future we see. Like, I'm holding a bottle of water right now, and this was a thought before it was a product. Somebody had to think it, plan it, and then take action in order to create it. And so as owners, as entrepreneurs, we have to see the future before it happens so that we can create it. So what's the picture we have of the future? Is it positive, hope-filled, uplifting? Do we solve problems? Do we make a difference? Does everybody on our team win in the process? Do our customers' lives benefit from this? All these things come into play. So how do we communicate that to those we lead and those we serve? Well, that attitude is going to be the difference in whether they see that future or not. So when that attitude is positive, the positive attitude has a bearing on the performance. Performance goes up when everybody sees the future and it's positive. Well, when performance goes up and thinking, it's driven by the thinking, then that's what creates the future. So our attitude, the way we see the future, determines our thinking determines our performance, and our performance is what creates the future.
Nice. Well, thank you so much, Tom, for giving this so many valuable nuggets on leadership, on growing a team. I'm sure our listeners are going to get a lot out of this interview. And like I said, it is like an honor to interview you because the Ziglar legacy and everything that Ziglar stands for means a lot to me, and I'm sure it means a lot to our audience. I know you you mentioned one book during the interview, and I see the book Choose to Win, which I also saw on your website. Where do people go to find out more about list some of the books that you have, and where do people go to find out more about those books, and where else can they go to learn more about what you do at Ziglar?
Yeah, so the best place to find out about us is at Ziglar.com, Ziglar.com. And we have all kinds of different programs there. The new book that just came out is 10 Leadership Virtues for Disruptive Times. And that's all about how do I lead in this world that we live in, right? With all the disruption, all the change, hybrid, remote, the great resignation. How do I hire and develop and keep the right people on my team, and all of those things? And as entrepreneurs and as leaders, that should be our number one focus. If we're going to grow a business, is how do we attract, develop, and keep top performers? And so we get into that, and it's about mindset and the virtues that I'd cover. I mean, this is such a great concept. You know, people always say, love your people, but they don't tell you how. Right? Doug, I love you. Right? And you're going to be like, yeah, he probably does. Well, if somebody says, well, how does Tom love you? You're going to be like, well, I don't know. We did a Zoom call. Right? And so that's what happens with our people. We say we love them, but the 10 virtues are actually how you walk that out. Kindness, respect. I mean, these different things, that how we run a meeting, how we work with somebody one-on-one. I mean, all of these things can actually demonstrate the love, self-control. I mean, all of these things play into that. And then the silver bullet in leadership, which is a one-on-one intentional coaching conversation. That's what that book's about. Choose to Win is a personal development book. And that's the center of the circle. So if the owner's right, then everything else has a fighting chance. If the owner's not right, eventually something's going to happen that's not good. But we do all that, and you can find more about it at Ziglar.com.
Nice. I know I'm going to pick up at least one of those books because they just sound amazing. So I encourage everyone else to go to Ziglar.com, check out what they can do for your business, and also check out the books that are available. Any parting words for the entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I tell you, this is, I believe, with all of the technological convergence, whether it's 5G or AI or, the new computing that's coming out, people are now very open to building relationships via cameras, so you can take your what you do anywhere. This is what I don't call it the great resignation. I call it the great reimagination. And so I would just encourage every entrepreneur, really hone in on what's the problem you solve. What's the problem you solve? And then dig into that and figure out how you can help those people who you serve find out what their other problems are too. They come in bunches, it's like, solve those problems. And then the people on your team, find out what their dreams and goals are and help them get it. And when you get that alignment, if people on your team can achieve their goals and dreams by solving the problems of your customer, that is an unstoppable dream alignment. So that's what I do.
An unstoppable force for sure. Thank you again, Tom. And until next time, Trailblazers, until the next entrepreneur journey, keep moving forward.